Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Today I have Luke. Luke, thanks for jumping on board and recording an episode with us today.
You're welcome, Anthony. It's good to be here, and looking forward to your hard-hitting questions.
I'm not sure how hard they'll be, but we'll see how we go. Do you want to let everyone know a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm Luke. I'm the founder and owner of an agency called Story League. So we're a storytelling-based agency, and that plays itself out across content. So we're talking social media posts, videography, podcasts, much like this one, and copywriting as well. So our big focus is the fact that people remember the stories, and stories are what build your influence, build your brand, build your audience, all those sorts of things. So we think that that's the most important thing that you can do in your marketing is tell your personal stories, because people want to connect with something that's human and something that's real. So that's our big focus.
Yep. So it's more around the personal, not the brand or the business?
Well, we do both, Anthony. So what we're noticing in recent times is the personal is becoming much more interesting and important to people now. So initially when we started Story League 6 years ago, it was all brand focus or company focus. But now, I reckon in the last 6 months, we're getting more and more requests for people wanting personal branding content. And you see a lot of other people talking about that on LinkedIn as well. So it's a really, really big thing in the US, personal branding, but I don't think we've connected the dots here in Australia just yet about how powerful and how important it's going to be. But we're just starting to see some traction around that now. And my prediction is in probably by the end of this year, it'll be our biggest service offering, the personal branding content.
Okay, so it's that much of a change is coming.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, if you look at things like the rise of ChatGPT, which is an important thing, it's not going anywhere, but what it doesn't do is tell genuine stories. So all of a sudden we're going to have an already oversaturated content market, even further saturated with content because it can be created in the snap of the finger now, that there's got to be something that cuts through all of that, and that's your personal stories. And there's no AI in terms of content creation that can actually generate stories based on context and meaning and tone and all the things that actually connect the audience and get them to follow your journey or your story. So it's going to become more and more important, that personal branding position. So, it's just a reference point to where we're going in society. People don't just want to go into a job now, get treated poorly and get the pay packet and go home and do it all again. They want purpose and they want meaning in their career, and they want self-determination around that. And the best way that they can do that is to start communicating what they want out of a career or out of a company that they're working for, or things like that. And that always comes back to the personal branding elements about who they are and what their purpose and what their mission is in their career or their business that they start.
Yep. So from what I've seen we've been in business for 16 years and attempting to market and make content for probably 7-8 years maybe. But what I've seen in that is, there is a shift from creating content as the business to putting my face a lot more forward, not just like anonymous videos, because I can just talk about things that I'm familiar with very easily. But in social media, what I'm noticing is it has been happening for a while, where there's a lot more shift to people following the person, not the business that the person owns. But the personal branding aspect, from my opinion, and what I've seen is, if you're working in a corporate or for a large organization, you don't normally talk about yourself. It's normally the small business owners who are the ones that are putting themselves out there and talking about themselves, not at a corporate level.
It's very true. And look, the reason why is because most small business owners, they're not the founder of Nike or Apple, where people just go and buy a product because it's got a name for itself. So our audience, yours, mine, almost every other business who's probably listening, your business owner who's listening to this podcast, their audience want to know and trust the brand before they actually buy their products or services. And the best way you can do that is to have the founder front and center of the content that you're creating, because it just builds that trust. And ultimately what that does in the long term is it shortens the sales cycle, because the trust is already there. They know and they like your brand. So it actually just helps with the sales process, because you're not going in cold, because this person's connected with you based on the story you've told. So it's definitely more relevant at this stage for the startup, the early business in development. But we're noticing in recent times too, we've had some large corporates talking to us about how the next generation of managers within that organisation can start to promote themselves. So it is a bit of a focus at that corporate level too, but I reckon it's a really big opportunity for, as you mentioned, those startup companies who's got a really unique and dynamic product that works and is probably better than some of the big players. It's just that they don't cut through because they don't have the money to splash on SEO or paid ads. So what do? We'll go and start creating our own personalised content, and will be a really good place to begin.
Yeah, and then that new generation of managers that are coming in probably lines up with like the generations of people that are in work, where the older generations are, you have a career, you stay in that one job for quite a long time. Or you have the younger ones where they're shifting more frequently, so they probably need to have a bit more of a brand, and this is the person you're getting.
And that's right. And if you do that, it becomes a really strong position for you, even if you're working for another company. So we do a lot of work within property, so a lot of real estate agents. The one thing I say to them is, if they start building their personal brand, they could leave not that their boss wants to hear this, or not that the company wants to hear it, but they could leave the organisation they're working for and go down the street and bring a really big audience with them, and be in a very strong position to negotiate terms that suit them when working for someone else, because they can prove that they've got an audience that's going to follow them. The second thing there is they can actually flick the switch and go out on their own too, because they've already got that audience there. And we see this with influencers, typically with like makeup and healthcare products on, say, an Instagram. Mm-hmm. The product can be absolute rubbish, but the audience lap it up because they follow the person. And, we're not seeing that in professional services right now, but we want to lead that charge because we think it's a really important thing. So, if you can build that following, build that network, it is, I say, your network is your new net worth. Oh, no, sorry. Your personal brand is your new net worth. So It's flipping on the head that old saying of your network is your net worth. So personal branding is the way to go.
So some of your experience where I think you were a journalist earlier,
right.
And so bringing in some of that, is it bringing in some of that experience with a critical eye and understanding and being independent, and then being able to assign that to a brand and a personal brand? Is that helping in that direction to get people from probably just talking about the business to talking about themselves a little bit as well?
That out? Yeah, definitely. So one thing I've noticed is good journalism is about asking the right questions at the right time. And obviously we do that with our customers now. So they come in and they say, our customers want this. And we're like, okay, well, do they, or do you just think they want that? So there's a whole process around asking the right questions to getting a result. And what we always try and do, and this is kind of another bit of a journalism trick, is we're not in the business of narcissism. I know personal branding can come across as that someone wants to promote themselves. And, in Australia, we think someone who goes and does that's a bit of a wanker, the tall poppy syndrome and all of that. But it's not about that. It's about telling your stories. But the connection point is making that story relevant to the audience that you want to engage. So there always has to be a message for someone else at the end of your own personal story. And that's obviously a journalism trick there, to just reshape that message a little bit, where it's still predominantly about the person to build their brand, but it doesn't come across as just egocentric, totally about just that person. There is that message or that learning for someone else within it. So definitely it's, journalism is not what it was, and it never will be again. And I've still got friends who work in traditional media organisations, and they're desperately clinging on, thinking the industry will change and people will come back to the newspaper. They won't. I'm a former newspaper journalist. I haven't read a newspaper for years now. Why would I? There's not that much interesting in it. It's biased and quite often slander, so why would you? But yeah, but the content creation is the new journalism now, which is good and bad, I might add. So, it can be manipulated for certain causes, but
Yep.
by and large, if you've got a good quality product or service behind you, or you're doing what you're doing for the benefit of others, it's a content creation, personal branding is a really, really big opportunity for people to jump on, and it's personalized marketing is the future of where it's all going.
Yeah, I think with the ability to create content very easily, like you mentioned with ChatGPT earlier, plus everyone is trying to make content now, so there's a lot of noise. You really need to find that way to cut through the noise and be able to stand out.
Yep, absolutely. We believe there it's pretty simple. Your personal stories are what make you stand out, because what is there? There's something like 64,000 real estate agents in Australia. Every one of them, well, most likely every one of them is on social media, or be a very high percentage of it at the very least. They're all talking about the same thing. They're all talking about property prices in the different regions that they are, what's going on with interest rates. It's boring, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing that they've got that makes them different from their competitors is their personal stories, because it's unique to them. So, and that would be the same of any one of your listeners, depending on the industry they're in. There's always going to be competitors, and there's always going to be topics that are spoken about regularly on social media, or keyword blog posts to get that traffic as well. That's fine, and you can still do that. But if you really want to connect, if you really want to cut through, it's telling your personal stories, because no one else can tell it.
So would those personal stories be related to sort of the industry you're in or working in, or is it more just learning about the person? Because I think I struggle with that differentiation.
It's a bit of both. So if you look at my social media, my LinkedIn is my big one for me. I'll talk about my little 16-month-old daughter. So she really doesn't have much to do with the business. She's too young for slave labour, so she can't work in it just yet, but she will later on.
Yep.
But the point there is, I'll post things about that, so people get a sense of my life away from the business. I'm also a big traveller. I like to go traveling as most people do. So I'll share stories on that as well. But that goes back to the strategy that you've got in place. So that's totally fine, because that is me sort of warming myself up to the audience. But off the back of that, there'll also be posts that are a lot more directed towards, hey, here's some advice about creating content. So go and do these 5 things when you're creating an online video, and we know that they work for your audience and things like that. So yeah, you definitely want personal stories about your life away from the company, because we've all got a life, or at least we should, and that's a really good thing to be talking about as well. But if you go far down the path and everything you talk about is just your life away from the company or the startup that you've got, then that's not a great place either, because people will lose touch with what you're actually doing and what you're trying to achieve. So it's a balancing act, but yeah, you definitely need both. Yeah,
so you don't want to skew all the way into that, the influencer side, be just showing off everything you're buying or doing.
No. I can't stand influencers. So don't. I wouldn't suggest someone go down that path. It obviously works for some people, but yeah, I think in the professional services world, it's probably best to build your brand on mission and purpose, as opposed to my face and try and flog someone else's product.
Yeah, because I think you see that a lot with the entrepreneurs or the startups. There's a lot of founders that just do show off the founder life, that they're making that picture or that image, which is bullshit,
which
really.
You and I know is bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we've got 16 years, I'm 6 years in, and I mean, look, I've got grey hairs in my beard. I didn't have them when I started.
Yeah, it's a fine line to cross over to that, but you've got to be probably a certain kind of person to do that. Like, I naturally do not boast about myself, so I'll never get to that point. But all the content I create on social media is all about, I've got two. So I've got my personal thing where I enjoy whiskey. So I've got an Instagram account where I do whiskey reviews and photos. And then I've got my LinkedIn, which is completely about work and nothing else. The two don't cross. I'm just making advice. I don't do much else besides this sort of podcast where any of my personality will actually come through.
Yeah. Well, see, that's a smart move. So, yeah, you're getting the interest that you want on the Instagram in your personal life, and then obviously a bit more of a business focus. So, I mean, you can cross over if you want.
Yep.
I wouldn't have any problem with the occasional whiskey
Probably
post
me
going
too.
up on LinkedIn, as long as there's that message for something that you've learnt about tasting a whiskey or trying a new brand or speaking to the brand owner or
Yeah,
whatever.
okay.
As long as there's a message there, you'd
Yep.
be okay with that. But it just comes back to your appetite for how you want to build your personal brand. So, from what I can see, you're doing it well. So keep going with it.
Yeah. Thank you. The other thing you probably noticed with when you're putting yourself out there in social media, how you mentioned the audience is warming up to you. You get a lot less conversations around the people that have problems with you. So you're like gating the ones that wouldn't necessarily want to work with you eventually anyway, because they've already seen you and they've made that decision. I don't like that guy. I don't like the way he talks, so I'm not going to deal with him.
Yep,
So I think
that's
it
very
does
true.
assist in that.
So yeah, so I have a bit of an appetite for danger, and I am not woke in any way, shape, or form. So I'll quite happily make posts on certain things which do rile people up, and I'm fully anticipating that people will attack me behind the scenes, and it does happen. I don't care in the slightest because that's a reflection on them, not me. And just for the benefit of your audience, I'm not being racist, sexist, homophobic, or anything like that. I'll just make a political stance on something, or say how I feel, or have a strong hook in order to lead into a post which has got a message that resonates and connects with a lot of people. Some people it doesn't. So yeah, very clearly. The people who don't like that won't be seeking my services, but that's okay because I then go and look at their profile and think, well, you know what? I didn't start a business to deal with people I don't like either. So
Yep. Yeah,
that's
you've
fine.
got that decision to make.
That's exactly right. It's a very, very big world out there, and there is lots of business for all of us, even for my competitors. And I love some of my competitors. We get on really, really well. There's a big world of business for all of us. So obviously, when you're in that sort of startup phase and you need to generate revenue, yeah, you're probably more inclined to take someone that you know is not going to be a long-term good fit. But then there's a point where you've built to a certain degree and you've got the customers and the sales pipeline in place where you don't have to worry about those sorts of things. So yes, your personal brand can remove those conversations from even happening. But if your personal brand is strong, you can also start making choices on who you want to work with too, because the people who are fronting up to say, hey, I want to work with you, they're coming to you. So you built that personal brand, so you're in a much stronger position. It's not you holding your cap out, asking for some money anymore. It's kind of the other way around, them holding their cap out, asking for some help because they know and trust your brand.
Yeah, and in these professional services, it's a relationship. You need to be able to work with the customers, and ideally, it's a long-term relationship. You're working with them for a long time and supporting them as their business grows as well. And then your business will grow alongside it as well. So, if you have that power to make that decision, or you have the tool where you can sort of gate them before they even get to you to make those conversations easier, that definitely helps. And then, the worst case, you can always do the overcharge if there's someone you don't like, which is what a lot of people do.
I've heard it called the arsehole tax before. I like that one.
That's better than the CST that we use. I won't say what the C is on.
I can kind of guess, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, you hear that a lot from a lot of people. It's I'll charge extra just for the headache that they're going to bring, but then that normally doesn't pay off either.
No, you're right. It doesn't. We've never really gone down that path, but we've certainly had some customers who have been annoying and frustrating, and it's in a way, it's not the ones that we've had. It's not that they're bad people or anything like that. It's just that the requests, they didn't just trust us that we knew better than them about the content creation space, and ultimately led to a situation where it's like, I don't need to wake up to 26 emails about the same thing from the same person in the morning. So, it happens. But now we've kind of built to that level where it's like, okay, well, if I can get a sense in a sales call of how you're going to operate and how you're going to be, then I'll make the decision that we either do or we don't with certain people. So, it's just one of those things. They're either going to love you or they're not, or they're either going to trust you or they're not. So make choices that suit you and your business first.
Yeah. And you've got to be okay with that. You don't have to please everyone. You're not going to make everyone happy.
That's
and you'll never
exactly
get along
right.
with everyone.
Yep, exactly right. Like, there are certain industries that I'm not going to work with just because I know they're hard, difficult work, and the compliance issue that goes with it to get content approved in order to just get it posted is just so tedious
Yeah.
and over the top because they're so fearful that they don't want to say anything that might offend someone here or there. And it's just like you can't predict that anymore. So,
Yep.
that's just not something you want to work with. It's not fun. It's not exciting. So you just work with the ones who are really, really keen to build their brands and just have a lot of fun with the process. And they're the ones you want, certainly in our space anyway.
Yep. So, talking to the audience out there, and if they're just starting out as new business or a non-tech founder in a startup that we sort of work with, what sort of advice can you give them about marketing or thinking about what to do about their personal brand to begin with, so they can set that foundation to grow with their business?
Yep. So there's a really good book called The E-Myth by Michael Gruber. He talks in there about the different personality traits. So, and the big concept of that is work on the business, not in the business. When it comes to marketing, I want to flip that on the head a little bit. So I and a lot of other business owners would go, okay, well, we'll do marketing from a brand perspective, a company perspective, because, as the founder, I want to remove myself from that. That's what I did when I started. It was a mistake. I should have gone down the path of building my personal brand first. So that's the advice that I would say. That is the really strong thing that an early startup founder can do right now, is get on the tools, a podcast or video, and make themselves front and center and just start talking about things like their hero's journey. That's a really big piece. So, what has led you to where you are now to start your startup? What has gone wrong? Build empathy for yourself. People love hearing, particularly Australians, love hearing where things don't go right and the lessons that you've learned from that. So that's a really big one. You talk about what you're wanting to achieve. So that's your vision, your mission, your purpose, your core values, things like that. So all I can say is, if you're a very early startup company and there's no real strategy in play or anything like that, you're just trying to test the waters to see if it's a viable product or business that you've got, just start creating content. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's never going to be perfect, but the only thing that prevents it from going live is you trying to perfect it. So Get on it, post it. I have so much data from my own personal post and the brands that we work with to say that posts where I've said to my social media manager, I don't like it, I don't want to post it, but I've still just gone, yeah, no worries. Let's just do it. It has performed so much better, like wildly better than content that I've created. And I've gone, this is awesome. This one's going to work really, really well, which dies. And, no one says it, no one connects with it at all. So the market ultimately determines what they want from you. And then once you've started creating that content, posted over 3-6 months, you'll be able to pick up trends that indicate what works for you and your brand and what you should be focusing on and what you could probably ignore as well. So the simplest piece of advice there is create content, do it from a storytelling capacity as well, because that changes the dynamic, because no one's got your personal stories except you. That's a really big point of difference for you and your brand.
Yeah, everyone's experiences mold them and are unique. So why not use the tool that differentiates you from everyone else, I suppose?
Absolutely. That's just marketing 101.
Yeah. I think I back up your statement there about just getting content out. So before we started our content journey 6-7 years ago, whatever it was, I hated my voice on audio or in recordings. I still do. But I don't know where I read it or I heard it somewhere. It was the only person that cares is you, and no one else is going to notice. As soon as I heard that, I've now probably made 150, 200 videos online and done over 120 podcast episodes. It's just me getting over that problem, saying I don't like my sound. So, but that's just in my head.
It's Yeah, it's a massive barrier. And look, I can understand it as well. You know, it can be confronting to put yourself out there, particularly in the offence generation that we've got now. You know, there are people, or well, not even offence.
Everyone gets offended over everything. It's ridiculous.
Well, I know it's ridiculous and it's utterly stupid, but and you know, people just want to take umbrage at something, or people just want to bring you down as well. So there's all that fear going on in your mind to say, okay, well, if I put this content up, well, you know, someone might say that and whatever else. Chances are they won't. But the upside of posting that content is huge. It could build your brand. It could lead to a new customer. It could it could lead to podcast opportunities. It can do so much more positive for you than one negative comment here and there. So, and look, chances are if you're posting content, while people might not necessarily like it, it's another step for them to then comment negatively. So it does happen, but nowhere near as much as what people think in terms of your personal brand for someone who's not, you know, one a celebrity or an elite or things or a politician or whatever else. So for the common folk, you're generally okay.
Yeah, and having a couple of negative comments might start a comment war, which makes your post blow up anyway. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It does. Like I put up a post the other day on LinkedIn, which the tagline was "Prostitution is the oldest profession in the world," and then went on to talk about how storytelling is the oldest form of communication and whatever else I connected the two. Someone didn't like that, and she made comment on it. I loved her comment. She totally disagreed with me, but I'm like, you know what? The other people, I appreciate everyone else who commented by saying, oh, that's a really interesting hook and it's a great message and whatever. I genuinely appreciate people connecting with that. But the comment I loved when I saw that come through, I'm like, hey, this is really interesting. She doesn't agree. She's articulated why she thinks my message is stupid. Cool, let's have a chat about it. And we did. We ended up having a bit of a laugh. So it's how you interpret the message as well. So I don't mind people disagreeing with me. I'm a little bit older, so I'm used to that world where we don't all have to agree, and it's not an echo chamber like the generation coming through now. But I don't mind it at all. So
I think we'd be
just get over that fear and post the damn thing.
Yeah, I think we'd be similar. There was no participation medals for us.
That's right.
Yeah, so with getting some of that content, and probably just one more thing on going beyond, say, your unique story, any advice on how to sort of find a niche so your content can stand out? Because if everyone's making a talking head video or everyone's writing an article, it does come down sort of like the hook. But is there any other way you can think of just trying to make a niche or a pocket that you can excel in? So from our end, I enjoy movies, so I started writing what I'm calling movie business. It's articles where I'm talking about movies where there's lessons you can learn from business. And any feedback we've ever had about content comes from those sets of articles because it's something slightly different that I see that no one else is doing.
Yep. It's a really good question, Anthony. And we as a company and me as an individual have just gone through that process ourselves. So at the end of last year, I was really burnt out and really tired, doing well in business, got some customers and whatever else. But I just got sick and tired of sitting at the desk every single day, smashing out emails, responding to whatever else. I needed a passion project, and I'm very stories is obviously my thing, and I love documentaries like Anthony Bourdain and travel and whatever else. So as of last Friday, we just recorded our first documentary where we're going to a suburb in Melbourne to interview business owners and get a sense of what life is like for them. This is becoming a really big passion project for us. We're already working on the next one. So what I would say there is, you need to combine what you're really interested with a tangible business outcome. So for me, doing that, we got a tour of a house in this particular area from a really great real estate agent who is a potential for us to get business with. So we've gone and created the project, the really interesting content that we love and that fuels us to do more. But we've also been able to connect in there a lead opportunity. So I would suggest going down that path is a really good way. So if you love documentaries, go and do that. If you love whiskey, go and start creating some content on that, tie it back to a message around the business that you're building and things like that. If there's nothing like that in place, all I would say is post your content and get audience feedback, because they will often tell you what they want and where they want it. And nothing is more powerful than that. So we do a lot of content strategies for our customers, and almost every one of them front up and say, we want to do this and our customers are going to like that. And then I say, how do you know? They go, well, we just expect that they will. So I said, okay, well, let's go and survey them. So, Survey Monkey or things like that. You go to the people who you're trying to pitch to.
Yep.
And try and get them involved from a very early point. So, and if they're honest, they'll be honest with you, right? So they'll tell you if they didn't like particular content and how they would prefer it. So the best knowledge is going to the people who you want to be your customers and finding out from them. But that aside, if you can think of a really creative approach to content, then it's really, really good because it makes you unique, but it's also much, much more fun to create than just another SEO blog post.
Yeah, of course. And then, if you can't do surveys, just push content out, see what people react to, monitor the stats, and then that'll give you an indication anyway.
It's as simple as a CTA saying, hey, let me know what you thought of this post. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it or a thumbs down if you didn't. You'll get your intel if you try.
Yep. Well, Luke, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for the time and all the advice. Hopefully the questions weren't too hard and fast for you.
I don't know, mate. I'm just going to have to go and get my team across this just to review it, just to say if I said anything slightly offensive. I'm sure it'll be fine.
If anyone wants to reach out and find out more information about you, how can they do that?
They can jump on our website, so storyleague.com.au, or connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my big one. So Luke Buesnel is the easy one there. We're across pretty much all social media channels as well. So it's just a matter of typing in Story League, or if they want to get in direct content, luke@storyleague.com.au.
No problems. And we'll put all that in the show notes and when we post everything out. So all that'll be there. Once again, thanks, Luke.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for the chat.
You're welcome. Anytime.